Hello and welcome. This is a new game in my road back to 2000 Lichess rapid rating. So in this game I was white. I opened the game with 1d4, and just to give you some kind of summary, I played this game very well. I ran the engine analysis and it turned out that the game was almost perfectly played by my side. So there was no, let's say, learning experience from this game, but it was a nice victory, and hopefully I can share some of my thoughts with you, so maybe you can find this analysis helpful for your improvement as well. So after d4 my opponent went knight to f6, I played knight to f3, and my goal was to go for some kind of cold Zuckertart attack, so e3, bishop d3 and so forth, but here he played g6, and now I have to give up my cold Zuckertart setup, because with this pawn structure, it doesn't make much sense to have the bishop on d3. So here from move 2, I am officially out of the book. I will just play the common sense chess, following some general principles and hoping for the best. So I continued with e3, he fianchettoed his bishop, and now I played bishop to e2. Like I said, it doesn't make any sense to have the bishop here on d3 at this point. So he castled here, I castled, he played d6, and I just went on and played c4. Why not? Having two pawns controlling the center, and then maybe my knight can jump to c3 behind the pawn and so forth. Here he played c5, and I took some time. If you look at my time, I was at 15 minutes, almost no thought at this point. But now I did some thinking, because I was thinking, what if he takes? Do I really want to take with the pawn? Or do I want to take with the knight? Or maybe I want to close position at this moment, or maybe I want to take the pawn. You know, there are many options. And also, if I want maybe to fianchetto this bishop, is this too risky, playing b3, exposing my rook? Maybe he can take advantage. So there was some things to consider here, especially since I'm out of the book. I have to consider all these options and don't usually play this kind of openings. And after some thought, I decided to play knight c3. Just logical developing move with no weaknesses, and this turned out okay. He played queen to c7, and now again I have to consider options like knight to b5, hitting the queen. And the main question is, what is the follow-up? If I do play knight to b5, he can just put the queen on b6, and then I don't know what to do. Then again, I had to consider all these possibilities, pushing the pawn, maybe even pushing e4, what to do with this bishop, many things to consider. And finally I decided to play rook to b1. And the idea is, first, I don't need to worry about this weakness. The second thing, now I can play my b pawn, maybe to b3 or even to b4, expanding on the queen side. And also then I can develop my bishop on this short diagonal if I want to. So overall, this looked like a reasonable move. The position is low, I don't need to worry that I will pay some big price from loss of tempo or something else. Now he played bishop to f5, hitting my rook, which I have no problems with because I can always block with my bishop. And my light square bishop is not the best piece on the board. It just sits here on e2, staring at its own pawn, so I don't mind giving up this bishop. He took the bishop here, I took back, and now he played knight to c6, logical developing move. Here again I have several options, but I decided to go for prophylactic move, because I saw that he can jump to b4 and then maybe harass my queen, and I like my queen here. It's pretty much centralized, it controls all these important squares, so I just played a3 here, stopping any ideas of knight jumping to b4. And now this next move is what I consider a critical mistake from his part. He played e5. And the problem is that now all his pawns are on the dark squares and he has a dark square bishop. And it's very easy for me to close the position, to fix his pawns on the dark squares. And I think at this moment he is positionally already lost, because he has a dark square bishop, which is a bad bishop, and my bishop will be a very good bishop. So I was very happy to see this move, I was hoping for this. So from this moment I just played d5, attacking the knight. He played knight to e7, and then I played e4. And now you can see that all my pawns are on the light squares, my bishop is on the dark squares, so I have a great bishop, and he has all his pawns on the dark squares and the bishop staring at these block pawns. So his position is not something I would envy. He played h6 here, probably going for some kind of attack. And here again I played a prophylactic move, h3. And the idea of h3 was that I want to develop my bishop on e3, and I don't want my bishop to be harassed after it's developed here on e3. And the idea of bishop being on e3 is that I was still hoping for playing on the queen side, because you can see that my pawns are pointing on the queen side. So I was looking, if my bishop was on e3, then I can start the expansion of b4. Or even I was looking something like, let me just show you, let me just play some random move. So maybe something like this, if the bishop is here, then maybe I can jump with the knight here on b4, harassing the queen. And now if queen here goes to b6, then this pawn will be pinned, and then I can thirst with b4. So this was one idea. Even if the queen is not here, b4 is much more interesting when you have the bishop supporting this break as well as the rook. So I would have two pieces supporting my pawn breaks on the queen side, and this looked nice to me. So anyway, this is why I played h3 here. And now he played knight to h7. So he's definitely going for the attack. The only reason for somebody playing this move is to prepare f5. So I played g4 here. So I'm anticipating f5 and making this more difficult. In fact, if he wants to play f5, well, now he will be opening his king, and maybe I can get the attack. Because you can see that, well, if I attack my king here, for example, this rook can come to the attack, then maybe this rook can join, this queen can join in the future. So g4 discourages f5. And here now he played queen to d7. So now the ideas of attacking the queen is gone, but it doesn't matter anymore because the play is obviously on the king side of the board. And now he is hitting my pawns, and this could be a little bit tricky because if he decides to attack my pawn, for example with h5, then this pawn will be attacked twice, and if I try to close the position, then this pawn is hanging. So I have to be careful here. So I decided to play king to h2, defending this pawn, and also preparing rook to g1, and now maybe I'm the one having the attack. And now at this moment he decided to go with f5, which I think works in my favor. So I took the pawn, he took back with his pawn, and now I play rook to g1. And now you can maybe see the threat is just to take h6, because now his bishop is pinned. So he has to play something like king h8. So now this bishop is no longer pinned. And now again it is time to think what to do. Do I take the pawn or not? If I take the pawn, then I'm activating his knight. On the other hand, I do have this nice square for my knight. So I gave this some thought and I couldn't decide what to do, so I just played this bishop to d2, connecting the rooks. So my idea was already something like this, knight to h4, and then delivering check here on g6, and if he takes with the knight, I can take with the rook, and then I can bring another rook to g-file, and also maybe a queen. So I can triple up my heavy pieces along the g-file. So this was the idea behind bishop to d2, to connect rooks and then continue this kind of attack. And now he played rook to f7, I guess with the idea to defend the bishop and also to double up the rooks, because this f2 pawn can be weakness. So if you can double up the rooks and then maybe take on e4, yeah, my knight would be hanging, my pawn would be hanging. So I guess this was his idea. But I wasn't worried about this yet, so I did play this knight to h4, now threatening this check, maybe now, maybe later. And now he decided to double up the rooks along the f-file. And now this really is a threat, f takes c5. But here there is a tactical trick. So in this position, it is I who can take on f5 without any consequences, because now if he takes with the knight, then I have check with the fork and I'm winning the exchange. So if you go back here, you can say that this rook to f8 is a blunder. So after e takes f5, he's losing the exchange. And he saw this and he took some time thinking about this. By the way, if you look at our time, I have 4 minutes, almost 5, and he has less than 2.5. Because with all my pieces lining up in the counter attack of his king, he had to spend some time thinking about defense. So realizing that he's losing the exchange anyway, he now took the pawn with his rook. I took the rook with the knight, and now he took my knight with his rook, hitting the unprotected f2 pawn. Which is not a problem because I can defend it in many ways, and I think the best way is just knight to e4. So you can see now this knight not only defends f2, but it's still blockading this pawn. So his pawns, which are on the dark squares, are blocked all the time. So even when this pawn was gone, I just put the knight here. The knight is now on the outpost, and his whole position is blocked. And now he's still trying to some kind of counterplay, so he played rook to h5, threatening this h3 pawn, which actually is not a threat because I'm defending the pawn. Now I'm bringing my queen to the attack, queen to g3, now threatening checkmate in 1 by taking the bishop. So he played knight to f5, which I anticipated he will play this because this attacks the queen and defends the bishop 2 times at the same time. But I also saw the response, and the response is queen to g4. And now I'm attacking the rook, and also I'm pinning his knight. So I don't see many good moves here. Maybe some attempt could be made by playing rook to h4. I will probably just try to penetrate. I'm not sure what I would do, but this maybe could give him some fighting chance, or maybe I'll just go back. But it's not a problem. It's the threat which is easily met. But since he was already in the time trouble, you can see that he only has 18 seconds. Now he started blundering, so he played rook to g5, probably thinking that he's just giving up another exchange. I don't know if he saw that I have 2 pieces controlling g5 and the queen, so 3 pieces. So I just took the rook, he took with the knight, I took the knight, he took with the pawn, and now I could just take the pawn back, but I wanted still to activate my other pieces. So I was thinking that maybe I can start with a check here, with the idea of taking with the rook and then bringing another rook to the attack. So even when you have the material advantage and you have the initiative and you have the attack, still you need to think all the time how can you bring all your pieces to the game. And of course, all these moves came with a blunder check. So in this case, I just had to make sure that he doesn't have any checks. Because if he can start checking me, grab the initiative, then I can come into some problems. So before making any of these moves, I had to make sure that he doesn't have any checks so that I can continue playing with the initiative. So after the check, he played king to g8, and now I just took this pawn, and my intention was to bring another rook, but here he blundered again, having very little time on the clock. He played knight to h6, which now I can just take the knight because the bishop is pinned, and now I'm threatening check in the next move, which he cannot stop, and then I can just exchange rook and queen for his queen and bishop, bring another rook to the game, and this is game over. So at this moment, being low on time and basically hopeless, he resigned. So this was the game. I managed to score some points. Thank you for watching. I hope this was instructive for you, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.